Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. Joined here today in studio by Sarah Curry. Welcome, Sarah. We are excited to have you.
Happy to be here. This is awesome.
Do you want me to cut the music out now?
I just feel like I'm going to go watch another episode of Yellowstone or something.
I like the music, and I
didn't say I didn't like it.
Okay, good. I let it run a little longer than usual there, so if folks are wondering what that was all about. Well, good. I have had multiple people ask me in the last few days, when are we going to hear from Sarah? So here you are, and we're glad to have you here. But local election results, that's the order of business today.
See, I haven't been here because I've been crunching data and making spreadsheets.
Well, I know you have.
So I'm ready to share.
Good. Before we get started, though, I'm going to remind everyone that you need to like and subscribe and do all those things that everyone tells you to do when you are looking, when you're following their content. Definitely remind everyone we're on YouTube video, but the more you like, share, we can appear and get the message out to everybody else. So I have said now that housekeeping thing. I would not be doing my job correctly if I didn't say, do you have a trivia question for everyone today?
Oh, I didn't think of one.
No, you didn't. No, that's okay.
Oh, a trivia question.
I didn't expect you to. It's just that's become a regular feature on the show, though.
Well, my son got a really good joke book. It's jokes for 8-year-olds. And the funny thing is he reads these jokes and he doesn't understand them because he doesn't understand how
are they
a word
like adult jokes or are they? Oh, okay. Like that'd be really funny if you had your
so why does everyone need? No, wait. See, I messed it up again. There's a joke about dough, and he's like, it's because they need it. And he doesn't understand that you need dough, but then you could also, need something, the two meanings of a word. So I
feel like there might be a joke in there, and your delivery just isn't very good.
No, I totally messed it up. But so that's my life right now is really corny 8-year-olds trying to understand
Okay.
joke books.
Before we die, that's great. That's
sorry.
plenty.
That's as good as I can do.
I don't know if I'm really. I enjoy trivia. I don't know that I'm really good at Iowa trivia. I mean, you asked me what was the first video I ever played on MTV. I'm your guy.
I missed this on Trivial Pursuit one time. It's the only reason I remember. Do mosquitoes have teeth?
No.
According to Trivial Pursuit, you are wrong. They do have teeth.
Do you know what the first video played on MTV was?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so that's actually I guess useful trivia.
I feel like it's relevant because they announced that MTV is going off the air.
Did they?
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to watch MTV growing up.
That doesn't surprise me. Okay. We should probably get down to business. I think that would be appropriate because you've got places to go. I don't have anything else to do this afternoon, but you do. So here we go. Before we get into local election results in Iowa, which is what you spent, we do have major news today, and I'm going to go into this in more detail with John because he and I have talked about this a lot, but a new entrant into the governor's race today. And we talked about this a little bit in our pre-production meeting, although not a lot, but we have teased this out on the program for a while, but Zach Lane is another entrant into the governor's race. And my understanding is that he will be very well funded, which is always one of the, and I know a lot of the folks don't like hearing that, but it's a major factor in this, and you have to have money to compete. And so I think if he has the kind of money that I've heard discussed, he is immediately a major contender for the Republican nomination for governor here in Iowa. Any other thoughts on that? Have you decided who you're voting for? I'm not going to ask you to share.
No one's going to pay attention to the bond elections next November because they're going to be focused on governor.
Absolutely.
So that makes me sad.
This is your moment in the sun.
I know.
Right here. And even in your moment, I'm asking you to talk about next November's election.
No one's going to pay attention to local government. This is a sign, people. The governor's race is one race. What affects your community will be on that ballot, too. So I'm going to remind people to pay attention to things that no one's going to be paying attention to. That's why I'm here.
I feel like we kind of fast forwarded to the net of all of this in the end, but
no, I don't know who I'm going to vote for governor because right now I'm trying to get my Thanksgiving menu set and deal with book fairs and Christmas gifts.
We're having a retirement community buffet, and I could not be more thrilled about it.
You're doing what?
We're having the buffet at my dad's retirement community at the clubhouse thing. It's going to be awesome. because I'm not helping to prepare anything. And when the meal's over, we all get up and walk away.
But you have no leftovers. What do you eat on Friday?
That is unfortunate. But I guess, we're going to be walking up to the Quick Star or something.
I mean, I feel like eating stuffing leftover mashed potatoes for a week and then being like, can we throw this out yet? It's just like a rite of passage.
Don't steal my joy, because I am here for it all. Okay. We do need to talk business though, Sarah. We had you on here last time talking about all the different, we were really focused on bond elections, some of those direct ballot questions.
Yeah.
And not so much who's running for what, because at least in our neck of the woods, I don't know about yours, there really weren't a lot of competitive races.
The Council Bluffs mayor was huge.
Was it? Okay, I didn't follow that one at all.
He's been the mayor since 2013.
And he's been a fairly high-profile mayor. Got involved in a lot of stuff.
It's kind of interesting. So for people in the western half of the state, Mayor Stothert in Omaha lost her re-election bid. A lot of it because of the streetcar they're putting into Omaha.
Yeah.
And Matt Walsh was a proponent of the streetcar, and his opponent said, no streetcar.
Didn't we call that a streetcar named Boondoggle once? Wasn't that like a title of an episode here? Okay, all right.
She won. She was a city council member, but she was opposed to the streetcar. So, I mean...
So the incumbent mayor lost in council.
Yeah. He had been on the city council since the late 90s, and he'd been the mayor since 2013, and he lost.
And how close was that?
It was pretty close. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's interesting because the main difference really between the two of them, and I wasn't following it super close, but I mean, it was the streetcar. Mm-hmm. And people are pissed in Omaha about that streetcar because businesses are closing. They're having to give businesses money because they're like risking shutting down because of all the construction.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Anyway, so it's very interesting because I feel like it's not the first time I've seen like a single issue kind of divide or decide an election. Other than that, there are a couple little small, uncontested like school board things. Like that's the big one that in my half of the state.
It seems like here in central Iowa or Des Moines in the suburbs is that, okay, they're nonpartisan elections, but we all know that there's at least a philosophical divide. And even if there was a contested elections, it just feels like Republicans and conservatives just aren't running for these spots anymore. There were a few where they picked up a seat here and there, but there's probably a lot of reasons why and a lot of takeaways, and we're not really here to dive into that. But the point being, I believe that the focus of these elections across the state was on those bond measures, or we had PEPL elections. We had I think a small handful of local option sales tax, but those direct elections about taxing and spending issues. That was the main event across Iowa.
I agree. I think in more rural areas, talking about city council, school board, it really comes down to voting for, I went to school with that person, or I know that person, or I go to church with that person. It doesn't really fit into like, I'm voting with someone for their philosophical ideology. I think that's more of a big city thing.
Yeah, it is.
So you're right. So in the smaller rural communities, really the bonds and those like tax measures are the ones that people have opinions on because everyone knows if they like, their buddy down the street. So
to set the stage for this, let's click through this real quick. We had the main event, I believe, that was clearly the biggest one, was the Des Moines Public School bond referendum.
That was historical because it's the largest school bond to ever pass in state history.
And that was, if memory serves, 260-some million?
265.
And that passed overwhelmingly.
It did. We don't have, I don't have voter turnout numbers yet. Secretary of State's office is still working on those. But let me see, I have to pull all my stuff. Des Moines, 73.4% of voters approved it.
And interestingly, the Des Moines Register reported that was on very high turnout. And we'll have to verify that because we're going to run our own numbers because that's what we do here. But clearly, the Ian Roberts scandal had nothing to do with that, and folks wanted to spend, at least the folks that showed up, wanted to spend more on this reimagining education initiative. There were some of the other big ones around the state. I believe we had Cedar Rapids, Dubuque were some of the other big ones. So Dallas County Grimes was big.
So Cedar Rapids last time had proposed what was then could have been the state's largest school bond, and that failed. So they came back again, and they dropped the amount. So they were asking for $117 million, and that failed. Not by a lot, but it did fail to meet the 60% majority required by Iowa law to pass a bond. Dubuque also had a very large bond proposal. They scaled theirs down significantly as well, down to $70 million. That one also failed. So
now the Des Moines suburbs ones, there were some big ones. I think we had Dallas Center Grimes was 80-some million, maybe.
Let's see, Dallas Center. I should have just alphabetized these, but I have them in order from pass to fail. So see, I shouldn't have done that. So you're talking about Dallas Center Grimes?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that one passed 75%.
Right. Big one.
Voted for that one.
Now, there's an example of maybe a Dallas Center Grimes, we've talked about in terms of Waukee or Ankeny, where you have a very fast-growing district, and the needs are different there in a fast-growing district than they are in one with relatively stable
But
enrollment.
I do want to point out, we don't have turnout numbers yet. Like I said, we're going to come out with those, but only 2,182 people voted in favor of that.
Yeah.
So a little over 2,000 people signed that district up to 20 years for that proposal. The turnout numbers were much higher last year because it was a general election year. So overall, I believe state turnout was around 18%.
Yep.
And so each one of these races has their own turnout number, and we'll work on calculating that. But really, you want a majority of your community to be engaged and to have a say in these things, because it does. It signs everyone up for 20 years of increased or perpetually high property taxes. So they are important measures to get engaged with.
And then I think the highest or the largest failure was the Dallas County Courthouse. Is that correct? Or was there a school bond? Well, no, I'm sorry. Obviously, the Cedar Rapids school bond would have been the big one. But here in central Iowa, the Dallas County Courthouse was maybe the biggest of the city proposals. I'm not sure. County proposals, sorry.
It was the largest of the county proposals. Sac County also had one. Theirs failed, but not by a whole lot.
But the Dallas County one failed by a lot.
Yeah, that only had 43% support. It has to reach 60 to reach support. But I will tell you, the one that had the biggest no vote was the city of Alta. Tiny, but they wanted $30 million.
That's a lot in the city of Alta.
Yeah. That election was 12 people said yes and 60 people said no. But yeah, 83% there, no vote.
The reason I brought up, well, there's two reasons I brought up Dallas County Courthouse. Because...
I'm sorry, it wasn't Alta. It was Charles City School District.
Oh, that's interesting.
Alta failed, but theirs wasn't $30 million. Theirs was 12.5. But
that's interesting on the Charles City
Charles City also failed. Yep.
I bring up the Dallas County one because I'm a Dallas County voter. But this was the quintessential example of what you've termed as the repeat offender. Mm-hmm. This was the very same proposal. They didn't shrink it. You talked about Cedar Rapids and Dubuque had shrunk their proposals to try and right-size them for the voters, and they still failed. But those were close. Dallas County came back with pretty much the exact same proposal, even with a little bit more money.
Just a little bit more, yeah.
And took it back to the voters again a year later, and the result there was they did even worse, right?
Yeah, they did. When we looked at all the people, we're going to say, try again, repeat offenders.
Yeah.
We had 19 of them, and if I remember correctly, only 4 of them made it past.
Yeah.
So out of 19, 4 passed. And so when I look at that, I mean, obviously voters are educated because they've seen the proposal multiple times. Dubuque and Cedar Rapids significantly scaled theirs down. It still failed. Dallas County kept theirs relatively the same, a little bit more. That failed. And so, people care about their property taxes. I know we can look at the Des Moines bond and say, oh, voters are okay paying more in property tax, but that's one issue in one city. And we really need to look at the state as a whole and see how people are behaving.
And again, I'm going to come back to that. I got a couple thoughts here on that point because I think that is maybe even the critical point through all of this. But I want to kind of summarize just in aggregate the data that you've collected about all of this. So I believe going into Election Day, you had us pegged at about $1.6 billion in potential new bonding that was on the ballot, correct? And then discovered that maybe you hadn't been fully informed by some of our
Yeah.
county election officials, was actually a little higher than that.
It was.
But anyway, that was, so you have an article that's going up soon on the ITR Foundation website. In fact, it probably will be up by the time you're listening to this episode. But we're calling it $1.7 billion in debt was on the ballot.
Yeah, and I just want our listeners to understand. So this information is not available anywhere else. Like, I spend hours and hours sending emails to county auditors and phone calls and compiling data and putting all this stuff together. It's a labor of love, but there were a couple communities that I found out later that we got incorrect information from. So if you read our first article or listened to the previous podcast, it's going to say like 1.5 billion. And then you're now saying, well, why are you saying 1.7? Well, because we found more bonds that we weren't told about originally. So we have all the results. This has been cross-referenced with Secretary of State's website. So this is accurate here, but I want the folks to understand we're not trying to be misleading. It was literally just when you collect data, you're kind of at the mercy of who's giving you the data, and you hope it's accurate. And that wasn't the case this time.
Right. So okay. So 1.7 billion is on the ballot, and according to you, because I've got the article and you don't, even though you wrote it, just over 1 billion of that debt was approved. Mm-hmm. Obviously, being driven by some bigger numbers here in Central Iowa, but give folks some context on those numbers. On the 1.7 billion of proposals, 1 billion approved. Is that a lot more than usual? Is it a lot less than usual? Because we put a lot of work into trying to raise the level of debate around this. Like, what? Give us some context on what those numbers represent.
So we've only been looking at bond data since 2023. So in 2023, we had an election in March and one in November. So if we look at both of those together, combined about $1 billion was passed then, not that much in 2024. And so when I look at the $1 billion number for 25, I actually don't think it's a whole lot, and that's just because Des Moines is such an outlier there. Like,
over a fourth of it on one
right.
specific ballot measure.
And so while that dollar amount's there, what I actually look at is the individual number of proposals. And since we've been tracking, and if I take March and November and add them together for 2023, we had 25 bonds pass, and that's city, county, community colleges, schools. We had 33 fail. That's the first time we've had that many fail, 33. So I think that says something, because that's 33 different decisions in different communities that failed.
Over half of the ballot measures for debt failed. Yes. I mean, let's just point that out.
And so there's two ways to measure things, obviously. But I do think the repeat offenders and the statistics surrounding the horrible success rate of those really does speak to taxpayers are paying attention and they are listening. And the fact that these districts think they can just keep coming back to voters year after year after year, like they used to before the reform happened that pushed these elections in November, I think they're having to get more creative. They're having to change, projects. And I really don't want to see them coming back in. I don't want to see Cedar Rapids and Dubuque on this paper again. They've been told twice no for different, amounts. They need to just listen to people and go back to the drawing board and start over and just find another way.
So what I want to try and with the remaining time we have, whenever we have an election, from president all the way down to city council, folks try, like, what did we learn? What's the net of all of this? And so we've had a lot of conversation here in the office, and you've talked with the media, and I've talked with other people. Like, what did we learn? And everyone's got a take on that. So I want you and I think, take a stab at that of like, what is the takeaway? And it seems to me that, look, over half of these measures failed, and there seems to be at least what seems to be a smaller dollar amount being approved. Is that hopefully, and I may be squinting a little too hard to try and make this point, is that taxpayers are having an impact in having the price tag of these individual bond measures reduced, and that local governments are doing a little bit better job of only advancing the ones that need to be passed. I don't know if those are true, but I would like for those things to be true.
I think in some communities they are. I think in some communities they're still figuring it out because they might not have had a bond referendum in a few decades, and so their voters haven't had to kind of care about it or get engaged with it before. I do think that the law change of the notification, letting people know that there's bonds, is helping with turnout. And there was a lot more discussion about it, I feel like, this year than in past years. So, 3 years is not a really good trend line to see some stuff, but maybe in 3 more years, we're going to see where people are on this stuff.
So I agree with what you said there completely. I think then the takeaway, I've heard people say, well, some of my friends here in Central Iowa, well, clearly voters want things that have to go with education or schools. Well, maybe here in Des Moines that was true, but at the same time, it wasn't true around the state because we had a bunch of school bond measures that failed around the state of Iowa.
Yeah.
So, and even some of the other Central Iowa bonds, I-35, Panorama, Knoxville, those failed as well. So I'm a little hesitant to paint with a broad brush about how Iowans just want to go into debt for their schools. But the other thing, I've got some thoughts, and I'm going to try and get through all of this, specifically to the Des Moines bond referendum, which we did not take a position on, is that there was a very active campaign run for that was very well funded. They ran TV ads. And again, we've said this is the second time in this episode that I have said this, campaigns matter and money matters. And TV ads on the nightly news of a bunch of kids in a classroom matters. People respond to that. There was not an organized campaign to vote no. And so, yes, a big number voted for that, but I think you have to understand that, if the voters want to defeat these questions in their communities, they have to get involved. They have to get involved early, and they've got to spend some resources on them. You don't have to like it, but that's reality. Now, it goes back to another idea I had is we need people more opportunity to get involved in this early, but whatever. That's one take I had. The question was asked of us earlier, and we really went round and round on this, Sarah. What do voters want? Because we know through not just our own polling, but others, that Iowans overwhelmingly are mad about their property tax burden. Over 70% of Iowans want some sort of restriction on the growth in local government spending. Mm-hmm. That crosses party boundaries. And yet you see a bond election, which is a straight property tax increase. You may think it's worthwhile, right? Not even casting a value judgment on that, but it is a property tax increase, and yet those pass overwhelming. So which is it? What do voters want?
Well, right. No, I hear you. I think we talked about this last time. There's been some misleading campaigns out there. I mean, Ankeny and Southeast Polk both said they're not going to raise the property tax rate.
Yeah.
Well, that's misleading because your taxes are still going to go up, right? Because our assessments are going to go up in the next 20 years.
A yes vote is for more property taxes, and no vote is for less.
Yeah, period. And so I think, if you believe in the investment and you think that your community needs it, that's one thing. But I do think there's some misleading marketing going on and people aren't fully aware of things. It's just going to be interesting. Like I said, next year it's going to be a congressional and governor's race. So I just wonder, with increased turnout but less media coverage, will we see a difference in the bond passages?
I'll be really interested to see that as well. And
You won't be caught up in the governor's race?
Oh, I'm all about the governor's race, U.S. Senate, all that stuff. But no, I do think it's interesting, especially since we're starting to track these things. I'm going to take a stab at some of this. And it's variations of something that I think I've talked about leading up to this. I don't always want to just assume that Iowans have been misled. I think sometimes they just genuinely say I believe that is worthwhile. the folks in the city of Des Moines, whatever their philosophical breakdown, said, you know what? I know that these buildings are falling apart or they haven't been well maintained. And regardless of the past record of Des Moines Public Schools and how they spent money, I think we probably do need a cash infusion to try and change the direction things are going. I may not have landed on that same square, but you can believe that and still want other solutions for your property tax burden. Those can both be true. And similarly, you've got the Dallas County Courthouse. Folks are like, no, I don't want to pay more property taxes than that. And maybe kids are more attractive than criminals for a political campaign.
I would agree with that.
But, also, what's been the history? One of the things that the Des Moines Public Schools pointed out is they didn't have any other debt currently.
Right.
And this is the first one. Well, okay, that's an important point. And they from a tactical standpoint, they probably good for them for leaning into it. Dallas County, on the other hand, although the levy is low, has raised property taxes recently and has put multiple big bond initiatives on the ballot. They have a brand new cathedral of a county administration building. And it was just, I still believe, too much too fast in Dallas County. But maybe I'm wrong, but I think the voters tend to agree with me that this is too much right now for the folks there. I just think they all have to be looked at. All politics is local. Every campaign is local. And these individual decisions need to be seen locally, which is what we want, is that informed people making decisions.
And we've seen this in past elections where we saw a bond by a county and that passed. And then the very next year, the school district tried to do a bond. Yep. And then they tried to do a PEPL. And then they tried to do an EMS levy, and everything else failed. And that's because a lot of people are like, well, I already voted for one. My property taxes already went up. And that's where local elected officials need to understand the county, the city, the school. They all layer on top of each other. And if your city needs a new fire station, it's going to be really hard for your school district to build, to do a bond and build classrooms. And then your county's going to want a bond too. And at some point, people just say no to everything because they're just tired of it. And so you're right. The local environment means a lot when we're talking about some of these bond proposals because people just have fatigue and they're just going to say no to everything, or they haven't seen one in 20 years and they think, oh, well, yeah, it's time.
So which brings me to kind of the last thing I want to talk about. And again, you were asked earlier today, well, how can folks make sure that these dollars, let's say I'm in a community where we approved one of these bonds and now all of us, there's a whole bunch of new money sloshing around. How do I make sure they're going to spend the money adequately? Or whether any of these communities or anywhere in Iowa, what should voters do next to get value or make sure that there isn't something else coming down or to hold the line? What should they do?
I think they have to stay involved. We've seen a lot of communities start doing online meeting minutes now, cities, some school boards, that kind of thing, just so people can tune in and watch and follow what's going on. But your engagement can't just stop on election night. A lot of these bond proposals, if you read the technical language that was on the ballot, it says including or, not limited to. And so there's some legal open-endedness there where they can spend this money in very flexible ways. And so it's important to keep an eye on your school board, especially if you've got brand new school board members coming on that don't know the history. They might be inclined to just say, well, that's what the superintendent said, so I'm okay with it. No, it's time to ask questions. It's time to be engaged. It's time to really look at things. And when it comes to schools in particular, I'm going to be interested to follow this for the Des Moines schools. At the end of the day, the mission of schools is to educate children. And when the Des Moines community did their survey on what parents wanted, the number one response was increased academic outcomes. I'm summarizing, but that's what parents want. And so that was the solution Des Moines Public Schools had. If we rebuild these schools and consolidate and move stuff around, it's going to increase test scores and academic outcomes. Well, the proof is in the pudding, right? We're going to see the data and we'll know if that did in fact help anything like that. But I think that's the purpose, right? We do these bonds because these kids need a safe, good classroom environment for them to learn in. I know if I didn't have air conditioning in August, I'm not going to be listening to my math teacher, right? But then do we really need the new indoor swimming pool? Again, making priorities, really trying to make sure that we're benefiting students and not just building little mini kingdoms out in rural Iowa. So
my school didn't have air conditioning, but whatever.
I grew up in the South. We had air conditioning.
Yeah, well, great. Whatever.
We didn't need heat, but yeah. But anyway, I think you just got to go. You got to talk to your school board members, especially the new ones, and let them know what's going on. You got to follow up, ask for updates. Cost overruns are not abnormal in government projects. You need to follow up on that kind of stuff.
I think that's all right. One thing that it may be underlying everything we've talked about on local governments, and we have plenty of reform ideas to make the system better, to protect taxpayers. We're going to continue to advocate for all of those things, is that voters need to engage. They cannot just vote and then hope it all works out. You've got to show up. You've got to be, you don't have to go to every city council meeting. You don't have to go to every, but you got to show up. You've got to be part of the discussion. I saw on Channel 8 News last night, they did a thing on the Dallas County Courthouse, and they had these 4 ladies that meet, I guess, for lunch or coffee once a week. It was great. And, they interviewed one of them, and this lady, I just don't think we need that right now. But you know what? There's 4 ladies that have educated themselves, continue to educate themselves on issues in their community. They get together and they meet and they talk. Great. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Is show up, get engaged, and be a part of the conversation, the discussion, the engagement about how we should be governed. If you buy into this idea of local control, which I hate even saying this in anything other than a pejorative, but if you buy into that, well, then you've got to be involved.
Yeah.
And so we're preaching that. Get the education. We've got it all at ITR Local or ITR Report Card, and then get out and talk to your friends and neighbors. And you probably should go to a city council meeting or a supervisor meeting and just learn what's going on. That's part of it.
Yeah, because, it's November, right? We're getting ready for the holidays. You and I were talking about our very different experiences we're going to have for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But think about it. Like, county races are next year.
Mm-hmm.
The primary's in June. Like, you're going to start talking to county supervisors probably January, February next year. They're going to be talking about things. The budgets are coming out. Like, it's not going to stop. Government doesn't sleep. And it's our property taxes, and we have to be aware of what's going on. And look, I got 3 kids. I know how busy it gets, but you have to be aware. You just have to know what's going on.
Yep. That is all true. So you have the results on this. They're going to be up at the itrfoundation.org website, and you're going to have some other articles coming up on this and other issues, so continue to look for that. We're going to try and do more of the Zoom, the getting you on the podcast more remotely. I still that's at least the goal, but it involves me getting everything set up and doing it, which sometimes a little follow through.
Because when it starts snowing, I don't want to drive to the office.
No. Well, sometimes I don't even want to, and I live just down the road. But
2 hours on I-80 in the snow, and my knuckles are white. I'm good. I'll just let's figure that out.
I've traveled down the road perpendicular to the direction of travel on I-80 in the ice before. So I've been there. Yeah. Anyway, good. Well, thank you for being here. I know it's hard for you to get up to the office sometime. I can tell you for sure that our listeners appreciate it, and look forward to getting more from you in the future. So, all right.
Sounds good. More data is coming.
That's right. We can count on it. All right, listeners, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. With that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.